Welcome to another one kit 10 cards, and today I'm playing with the May card kit by Simon Says Stamp. As always, let's take a look first on what's included and then I'm going to share 10 cards. First of all, you get 4 colors of distressed crayons. It's great because you get to play with them if you haven't have any in your stash. Then this is a big stamp set. It has that Tim Holtz vibe to it, and you get lots of background stamps as well as focal points. There are many sentiments in the stamp set, but you get an extra page with printed sentiments ready to go for you. Just cut them and stick them on your cards. This is a full package with foil transfers. You can use them for your sentiments or even add some extra touch of copper. A vellum. You also get a mini archival ink in black. And then let's take a look at the paper. The papers are 8x8 from the Tim Holtz collection. They are printed front and back, and I will be using pretty much every one of these pages, leaving only a few scraps. You know that I always love using the pattern paper in my videos, and I always share ideas on how you can use them in your cards. Now, in the kit, they also threw in a little bit of twine as well as an envelope. And there is also included a watercolor brush. This is the one that it gives you a barrel that you can fill in with water, perfect for on the go. And let's take a look at the cardstock. You get 3 pages in 3 different colors, as you can see. I'm going to show you what I like to do with them. I have a system with the cardstock that I get in those kits. Your lollipop, of course, and then for the subscribers of the kit, and only for the subscribers, you do get an extra 3D embossing folder. You can get the kit as a subscriber every month, and I think the price is $5 less plus this embossing folder, or you can just get it for one time, but it costs you a little bit more. Plus, if you are a subscriber, keep in mind that you can always stop your subscription whenever you want. Now, with the cardstock that I get in those kits, I like to cut them in 4 panels, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. This way, out of 3 papers that I get, I end up with 12 panels so that I can make way more cards that I need. What I like to do is to create the panels individually, and then all I do is just stick them on pre-folded white cards. So I always have some of those folded on hand, and all I do is just stick them on top. Now let's start with the first card for today. And as always, I'm focusing on the pattern paper included. I like to use my rectangle dies, and the pattern papers are all like patchwork of different areas. So it gives you lots of ways to play with them, which I'm going to show you today how you can do that. So I'm separating an area here with the flowers. This is going to be my panel, and then I'm going to use different areas from the other pattern paper, from the rest of the pattern paper, to create clusters. Now, what I like to do is to create clusters that are dimensional. So this way I make, although I use the same pattern paper, I make it look more interesting, and I add a dimension which always adds something extra on a card instead of just sticking a piece of paper as it is. So I'm going to ink up the edges. You can even use your scissors and fray the edges a little bit if you like. This is going to give more interest on the little pieces. Here I'm even tearing off a little bit on the side. And then just create a cluster on one side with the little pieces that you have cut out. I'm going to use my tiny attacher, the stapler, to stick them down. This way I leave them kind of, they have some movement, as you can see. And at the same time I introduce some extra texture, which is the stapler. I'm going to stick that down. And I did use foam squares at the back, and then I need an extra focal point on my card. For that I'm going to use one of the butterflies. I'm going to fuzzy cut it, again from the same pattern paper. Some little foam squares at the back of the wings to make it look more dimensional, and I'm going to stick it just next to the cluster that I have created. So just from one pattern paper I created this card. I am embellishing it with my contour liner. You can use gems, you can use splatter ink if you like, whatever. and I'm going to use one of the ready-made sentiments. Now this one is kind of white, really bright white. I don't want that to be that bright, it doesn't match with the rest of my design. So I just inked up the edges a little bit, and I'm going to stick it down again where the rest of the cluster is, so everything is kind of connected. And as always, here are some close-up photos on the first card for today where you can see the details better. And let's move on to card number 2. I am using this pattern paper as the base and I'm cutting it to be a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Don't throw away anything, I'm going to use pretty much all the scraps that I will end up with. From this pattern paper I'm going to cut out the strip where you can see that beautiful leaf at the back. And I don't need it as long, of course. I'm playing with the number 5 and trying to decide if I want to use it as a layer, but I decided not to waste it. It's a lovely number, so I'm going to use it in another card. I'm fraying the edges with my scissors, and then from the stamp set I'm going to pick some of the stamps that are great for backgrounds. Now you can stamp those either with the archival black ink that is included in the kit. I'm not going to open it up, I'm just using one that I already have open in my craft room, and I'm going to stamp at the background. I already know where I'm planning to stick that strip, so I can add a little bit of interest at the background using those stamps. I'm going to switch and mix and match 3 of them, and notice that I don't stamp all over the place. I create kind of clusters with those 3 different stamps that I'm playing with. So I'm going to switch to the third one that looks like a ticket with numbers, and again I'm going to stamp close to where I have stamped before. Now I do have that twine included in the kit. I'm going to wrap it around and tie a little bow. This is going to introduce interest on my card again, since it is a different texture than paper, and then with foam squares at the back I'm going to stick it in place. Now I do have different texture and I do have dimension, so my card already looks interesting. I'm going to use my reverse tweezers and curl up some of the corners. I always like to add this little detail when the design permits. I'm also going to ink blend a little bit on the edges with brown, just to give it that vintage look. I'm adding splatters because I simply cannot stay away from them. And this is one more pattern paper that I'm going to separate into different areas. Now what I'm doing here is separating the part with the flowers, and I'm going to use that in another card, so leave it aside. Then there is this other part with that kind of a letter, again separating that to use it on another cluster. And for this card I'm going to use the bird, so I'm just going to fuzzy cut it. Just really quickly, I don't leave any white border, any black border all around. It was super easy to cut it out, and I do have foam squares at the back and stick it in place. Just add a sentiment and you're done. Now for the next card I'm using one of my circle dies to make sure that that beautiful bird image with the birds fits, and then I'm going with one of the window cards. You can definitely turn this into a shaker card if you like. I just created a window with my circle. I'm going to stamp a sentiment. The sentiment is from the stamp set in the kit. And then I'm just going to simply stick that on top of this beautiful image and add some embellishments. I'm using my contour liner, but you can use gems or whatever you have. Super simple card, but here is a little touch. Just add a dot on the bird's eyes. It's going to make a huge difference. If you do have some dies to cut out foliage, you can tuck it inside like I did here. But if you don't have any, no worries, it's going to look just fine. And you can definitely turn this into a shaker card if you like. For the next one I'm using this scrap from the previous card, and I'm going to cut out a panel which is slightly smaller than the standard card. Now I always need a focal point for my cards as well as some dimension, so these butterflies are going to do that job. Now these are black and white, but I want to give them a tint of yellow. I happen to have the yellow in the distress crayons that I got in the kit, so I'm just going to add at the center a touch of that and just blend it out with my fingers. So see how it works really nicely. Just because that paper is not that porous, it has kind of a coating on it, it's kind of shimmery, so it is really easy to blend that distress crayon on top of it. I'm going to stick the butterfly so I instantly have some focal points and dimension. To make them even more special, I'm adding some gems at the center. And then just finish it off with a sentiment. Now, just because I make 10 cards, I like to use ready-made sentiments, but you can definitely switch them up with the sentiments that you get in the kit. Now for the next card, I'm going to use this part with the insects. I absolutely love this background, and I'm going to cut out again a panel out of it. Now I need a focal point again. You have the best focal point, which is the butterfly in the stamp set. So all you have to do is to just stamp it with black, and you do get the black ink in your kit. So just because this is very white bright, I wanted to match more with the background, so I'm using my cream dye ink. This is a ink from my Stamperia signature collection, which makes every bright white into cream, making it perfect for vintage cards. So now let's bring in those crayons, and I did have the green one, so I'm adding a touch of green. On my glass mat, I'm going to dilute it with water and use it as watercolor, mainly at the center of the wings of the butterfly. I'm using green because if you look at my pattern paper, there is a touch of green there, so I'm trying to match that part. Now for the body of the butterfly, I want to end up with something like brownish or close to burgundy. There is some of that color on the pattern paper if you look up at the top in one of the insects. So I'm going to mix up with the colors that I have. Again, it's very easy to dilute with water and mix up the colors to make your own. So I'm just testing out how it looks. I'm happy with the outcome, and I'm just going to color the body of the butterfly. Super easy to do. I'm not transferring too much water on the butterfly because I forgot to use watercolor paper to stamp and cut it out, but I had no issues with just my simple cardstock. At the back, I'm going to add some foam squares so that I have dimension. You know that I cannot stay away from it. And I'm going to stick my butterfly at the center. You can easily repeat this design again and again, since you do have the butterfly as a stamp and lots of pattern paper to cut out as background. Just stick a sentiment on top and you are good to go. Now remember, I cut out that 5. I am going to cut out the rest of the numbers from this pattern paper because I feel like this, if I combine all those numbers together, they would make a great masculine card for happy birthday. So I'm just separating all the numbers to kind of mix and match them in a card as a background. Again, I'm not going to throw away any of the scraps. These can all be used as patchwork in another card to create a background. So now here is how I decided to put everything together. For 2, I have 4 pieces. For 2 of them, I'm going with glue, directly sticking them on my card base. For the other 2, I'm going with foam squares to add my dimension, and at the same time I frayed the edges so they stand out against each other even more. You can just stick a happy birthday or any other sentiment from the stamp set. I went again with one of my ready-made ones. And I'm going to finish it off with some splattering because I cannot stay away from it. I absolutely love the grungy look on this card, and I think it makes a great masculine card. One of those age is just a number cards. For the next card, I'm using scraps. Again, I'm sticking a panel on top of my card base, and then I have this piece of the pattern paper, which I'm going to do some fuzzy cutting. I don't know why I do things like that sometimes and make my life difficult, but I just love dimension and I want to pop things on top of my cards. So I just fuzzy cut 3 of the flowers, and I just cut out a few of the leaves so that I can create a little cluster on top of my sentiment. Now for my sentiment again, I used one of the ready-made ones because I wanted to have white letters on top of black, but you can easily recreate that style with the sentiments from your stamp set by doing heat embossing with white embossing powder on top of black cardstock. I just create 10 cards and I have to at least go fast with my sentiments. That's why I usually omit using the sentiments from the stamp set. So now I'm just adding the flowers here and there, trying to find the best position. I did use foam squares for the back of the flowers, so they are nice and dimensional. And I'm just finishing it off with some white dots by using my contour liner. For this scrap, I want to use front and back for 2 cards. So the back will match with this cardstock from the kit. The front, I'm going to turn it into one of those cards that you can recreate with pretty much all your scraps. So I'm holding on to this one for the next card, and now for this one I'm going to just cut out the panel and use the back of it. I'm going to stick it on top of my card base. And for this card design, I'm going for a very soft and elegant design. I want to use that tree that grows. I like that you see the roots. I am measuring with my glass mat at the back that it is about 2 1/4. So I cut out my vellum that was included in the kit into that size. And I'm just now combining the tree along with a couple of those background stamps. I used them in one of my cards previously, and that's why it is black. Don't worry about it, it is stained from the archival ink, but it is completely clean, so it's not going to transfer any black. I'm going to do some white heat embossing, so I'm stamping with embossing ink, and then I'm going to apply fine embossing powder. I'm going to use my heat gun and set the embossing powder, and I love that soft look of white embossing on top of vellum. Now I'm going to stick that on top of my card, just actually wrap it around, and just to secure it in place I will use some scotch tape at the back. I absolutely love that tree design at the front, and I think it would make a great birthday card since you can see something that grows, even showing the roots underneath. Now sentiments like birthday sentiments as well as personal growth ones would go great with this design. And of course, as always, you can add gems, pearls to embellish your card. I did use my white contour liner. And now this is the card that you can recreate again and again with all the scraps from the kit. You do have the stamp that you can stamp on some of the scraps, and the butterfly can make a great focal point. And for all the scraps that you have, you can turn them into backgrounds. I even used some pigment white ink to ink up the edges a little bit, as you can see, and I just stick that on an angle to make it look more interesting on top of my card base. Just stick a sentiment on top and you're good to go. If you want to make it extra special, you can add some gems like I'm doing here, but again keep in mind this design can be recreated again and again until you have no scraps left. And finally, it's time for the last card for today. All I did was to use this stamp from the stamp set, and I just white embossed it on one of the panels that I created from the cardstock that was included in the kit. Now I'm using one of the ties from my stash to create a little tag, and if you don't have such a die, just cut out a a rectangle and use your scissors to cut out the top corners. Super easy to do, and you just only have to add a hole at the top middle. Now I'm using the embossing folder that was included in the kit to run it through my embossing machine, and this is going to create my background panel. I'm going for a very clean and simple design for this last one. And I did use a vellum from the kit to cut out the tag one more time, just to create some layers. I'm threading through some silk ribbon, and now in between the vellum tag and the cardstock tag, I'm using foam tape so that they stand against each other nicely, and I'm going to stick the whole thing on top of my panel. All you have to do is to just add a sentiment on top of it, and then some gems or pearls if you like. Again, I did use my white contour liner. I always find that dots add that whimsical touch and elegance on a card. And this finishes the 10th card for today. If you are still with me after 20 minutes, thank you all so much. Don't forget to leave a comment down below and like the video. Here are photos on all the 10 cards that I shared today. I hope that you had fun, that you got inspired. Links to everything I used can be found down below in the description. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll see you all next time.